basically put out from the main house because of the construction going on, or in our camper, because that's where we're pretty much living right now. It's a lot of fun, and will be as we move cross country. So lots going on. My office location probably will not ever look the same again. So be on the lookout for that, and just the diverse backgrounds. Thanks for bearing with me through this fun and evolving stage of my life. All right, talking about power. So we are doing a 4-part series on power. We're starting today with definitions and talking about types of power. And I think it's important that we start with this, because in order for us to have a conversation about power, what power looks like, how power is discussed in leadership, how we maybe want to advance a paradigm shift in power, we have to have common terminology, right? It's very common in communication errors that individuals actually have different definitions of things. Let me give you a really simple example. Like, you ask your partner to clean the kitchen. They may have a different definition of what clean or what done looks like for that task than you have, right? There's an example where definitions can actually hinder communication. So I want to start this particular discussion with definitions about power. And then next week, we will be talking about locus of control, reality versus mindset, really thinking about power over in terms of an individualistic approach to power. Then the following week, we'll be talking about the importance of trust as it relates to power. Power and trust really need to go hand in hand. So we'll dive deeper into that. And then finally, on week 4, we'll be talking about control and executive presence, really how we can, as women, as individuals, actually exhibit more executive presence, exhibit more grounded confidence when we are working to embody a power with mentality. So that's where we're going. I just wanted to lay the roadmap, because this is the first time I've done like a 4-part series. And as always, the more conversation we're having about power and these topics, where we see them show up for us, either in our professional lives or our personal lives, things that resonate, things that don't, the more conversation we have about that, the better, because we get different perspectives, and it very much becomes less about me talking about what is of interest to me or what people have said is of interest to them, and it becomes a conversation. It becomes more valuable. So definitely chime in. So if you were to Google, or if you were in management classes and individuals or teachers were talking about power in terms of power and how it relates to leadership, you would get a number of different types of power. Things like legitimate, coercive, referent, charisma, expert, information, reward, moral, connection, or founder power. These are, if you see like the 10 most common types of power in leadership, things like this will come up. If you just search down and try and niche in on the 4 most common types of power, you'll see things like legitimate and coercive. And what always strikes me about this list of types of power in leadership is that, for all intents and purposes, these are all power over types of power. So what do I mean by power over? Let's pause and define that a bit. So power over is really the control or the power one person has, or an individual has, or an organization has, or a government has over another. So power over is very much just what it says. It talks about what you can wield over another person, or what a government can wield over you, or what an organization, or maybe even somebody under the guise of leadership says the organization can wield over you. That is in and of itself the definition of power over. And if you think about all of those powers, those different types of powers that were talked about, or that I brought up, that you can easily find when Googling or looking for, trying to understand power and leadership, is those are all examples of power over. So like legitimate power, that means I have a higher job title than you. And therefore, I have, quote unquote, legitimate power over you. I've earned that title. Therefore, I have power over you. Coercive power is obviously, or to me, excuse me, not obviously, but to me, coercive power is one of those that so obviously falls in the power over camp, right? I can take away some benefits you have. And because of that, because I have that ability to sort of manipulate your independence, your being, that automatically grants me power. But even something as seemingly innocuous, benign, and good as connection power, when you dive into how the standard leadership texts talk about that, it still becomes power over. Like connection power is often defined in a way that reinforces power over. Here's one definition that I have that I want to read about. And it's leaders have connection power when their alliance with influential people is admired and desired by others. So that is how standard business lingo, standard leadership lingo defines connection power. And I hope I've clearly explained like how I feel and how I see these types of power all really relating to power over. Any questions for me on that while I close this chat that should be open?
Never heard about connection power. That's interesting.
Right. And you would think connection power. Oh, and I later have a proposed alternative definition, but even the way that it's being defined in standard leadership texts is all power over. Like, we leaders that have connection power because they have alliance with influential people and it's admired and desired. It's still one-upping the leader because of their connection, right?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's frustrating to me now that this light of sort of I always have felt that words matter, but now that this light of like how leadership so often talks about power in the context only of power over, it just once I open that door, I can't shut it.
Understandably so.
Any other thoughts on this, on what I've talked about so far, on your experience with power over, your experience with different types of power, and what that might feel like for you?
One word, Tara, expert. So on my recent CV, I've had to put subject matter expert, and I am in my field, and I feel confident saying that. But I don't think that's a power over statement going into a new company like I've just done. I think that's a good thing because I'd want to share the experience. So when you said all these words, the first thing I thought was men. These sound like men's words, but I don't think they are, because you can have power over in a positive way, surely.
Oh, there's so much there, Gaynor. I love that. So first off, these cords are driving me nuts. Subject matter expert, like expert, that in and of itself is a good thing, right? It is something that you want to put forward, especially when you are shopping for a new job, when you're looking for the right organization where you can marry your expertise with an organization's needs. So I don't see anything inherently wrong with that. Where I see, and you know what, let me just for fun call up a definition of expert power. Just quickly see if I can read to you how some leadership people would describe it. And this is from a quick base blog. I just quickly called it up. Expert power comes from one's experience, skills, or knowledge, right? Okay. At the base, like not a bad thing at all. We want to put forward our experience, skills, or knowledge. Where expert power can become power over, rather than perhaps power with, is when we are the only ones that have that expertise in our minds, right? When we feel that because we're the expert, we're not open to new ideas from other people. We're not open to that millennial coming in and saying, hey, what if we tried it this way, right? Because we're the experts, we're grounded in that. Whoa, that's where it becomes power over. And that's the difference of, to me, expert power as power with versus power over. So if you have expert power, you are grounded in your knowledge, your experience. And if you're embodying power with in the context of expert power, you are still open to hearing other ideas, because although you have a lot of skill, knowledge, and experience, we can all always continue to grow, right? And that doesn't mean that all ideas that come our way make a ton of sense or are worth pursuing, but we're open to it when we have a power with mentality. And now I realize I've already jumped into that, rather than a power over mentality. So does that help at all, Gaynor?
Yeah, just the words power with sounds better than power over.
Right? I'm glad you feel that way. I totally feel that way. And you know, one thing that you said was all of those words reminded you of men. And I've mentioned this book before, and I think maybe the Mindful Leaders Academy will do this as a book club book in the future. But the book Cassandra Speaks, When Women Are the Storytellers, The Human Story Changes. It's by, let me look at my notes, Elizabeth Lesser. It is just so poetically beautiful and shares so much about how the framework, the understanding, what we take as dogma, right, as truth, just inherently comes from patriarchy, right? So let me give you a beautiful example of this in this situation. So the term power with was actually coined by Mary Parker Follett. Now, she was born in 1868. She died in 1933. She was a social worker that had a humanistic approach to management. And she's actually considered like one of the mothers of modern management. All right. And she coined the term power with. Really, she had this idea, and she talked about integration in like a non-coercive way of power sharing, recognizing that when groups of people come together, and now, of course, she wasn't necessarily in organizations. She was in, for-profit organizations. She was in social work, and then she went to work for nonprofit organizations. Again, she was born in 1868. She died in 1933. If we think about when her work was probably most pivotal, when she was in the throes of her work, if we put that around the 1900s, leading on, like that was quite some time ago that she coined the term power with. And she, she really put forward this idea that was seen by management, including managers of for-profit organizations around that time, as amazingly powerful, as influential, as the ability to bring together groups of people and have a stronger output. Then, if you think about just the history of time, right? After she died comes World War II. There's post World War II, right? During World War II, all hands on deck approach, right? That was, at least in the United States, and I believe in the UK, that was what happened, right? Women were in the workforce, either, in factories or as nurses. They were out there. But then post World War II, there was this incredible retraction of women in the workforce, right? There was, if you think about a pendulum swinging one way, and World War II being this horrific example of how we needed all hands on deck, the pendulum for women in the workforce swung so far the other way post World War II that women were largely out of the workforce after World War II. And then the leadership story, the talk, the dogma shifted from a humanistic approach towards more of a scientific methodology, or that's what they call it, with like various leaders or earlier voices such as Gantt and his Gantt charts becoming more emphasized by the leaders of the time, right? By the people in business, by the people that were training on management and leadership and studying it. It was all men at that time, for the most part. And as a result, some of the stories got lost, right? it's a lot harder to find information in MBA programs that focuses on Mary Parker Follett's work, right? It's a lot more common that when you're learning the history of management, there are all of these men whose, contributions towards productivity, contributions towards performance, contributions towards efficiency, right? Those were all in time valued over the humanistic approach to management, because those were the people that were generating the stories. So I hope I've drawn an okay parallel between what Elizabeth Lesser talks about in Cassandra Speaks, and actually a real life, situation of how the story of Power With sort of went by the wayside. And now hopefully with like the social reckoning that we're going through, with the response to, at least in the United States, the leadership that we've had prior to the current leadership, hopefully more and more organizations, more leaders, both in the corporate world, in the government world, hopefully we will be calling upon and channeling more of Power With, because that pendulum has swung too far one way and needs to come back.
Interesting.
I just Googled her, and it says, it's very simple. She defined management as the art of getting things done through people.
Isn't that great? I know, I love that quote. I love that
people.
quote, right? Yeah.
I'll read up on her. I've wrote the name down. Thanks, Tara.
Yeah,
Very
definitely.
interesting. I'd never heard of her before.
Unfortunately, there's not a lot that I've been able to find on her. You look at any of the other people that have, not any of the other, but any of the other male people that have contributed to management theory, and there's boatloads, there's biographies written. And I'm just like, what about Mary Parker Follett? We need more, right? And so with that, and just that thinking of power over versus power with, I think we can start to redefine some of these words. And it starts with us. It starts with us as individuals. It starts with us and how we incorporate some of these things in our lives. So if we think about that connection, and I want to read it again, that definition that I had found of connection power, right? So it was written as, leaders have connection power when their alliance with influential people is admired and desired by others. So you are seeing somebody that is a leader that has connection power, and you're feeling it because they're elevated above you. They know important people. They have alliances or connections with important people. And so my proposed redefinition of connection power is something along the lines of the ability of someone to match people and organizations that will benefit one another. So I love to think about reframing some of these definitions. Like if I think about wanting to have connection power, I want to have, not because it elevates my status, but because I want to embody power with. I want to have the ability, because I have a large network of people, to help connect people that are looking for a job with an organization that is looking for those people skills. That's one example of power with that I want to embody. When I think about connection and the power of connection in the context of power with, if I know somebody's really interested in something and I happen to know somebody who's an expert on that, I want to be able to make those connections. That's how I want to embody and sort of put forward a new definition in my mind, at least through my behavior, through my thinking about these words and what I actually want these words to mean. That's an example of how we can start to shift the story, right? That is what I want my connection with power to be. I don't want it to be like, oh, I want to work with Tara because she knows so many people that are like really influential. No, I want to be exhibiting my connection power in looking for people that need to be or want to be partnered up with other people so that they can then go forward and do great things. That's actually where power with comes in for me in that definition, because I really like the hairs on my arms and like my spine tingles when I read that standard definition of connection power. That is such a one-up power. And I want to call bullshit on it and do better and do different things. So I'm going to pause again. I'm curious if anybody has any questions I know we went through a lot today, but I think talking about power over versus power with will seat us well for the future weeks as we go through this power series.
Are we gonna talk some more in details about power with and kind of maybe some examples or application? I really like the concept, and I want to make sure that I understand it and I embrace it more. I have sort of a feeling that I probably do some of the things that align well with power with, especially at work. At home, I have to say, I find myself, I'm probably more power over, which is not good, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so I would love to hear whether we're gonna dive a little bit more in depth into power with.
Yeah, we can even do that now. We've got some time.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Sure.
interesting that you brought up the concept of embodying power with in the workplace in sort of an easier way, or it's having it be a little easier. And then maybe in the home place, in the home front, having more power over tendencies, because this is something that I play with a lot. So
yeah,
I'm curious if would you mind if I shared some thoughts I've had on this over the past couple of months?
Please.
All right, and I'm gonna get really candid here, right? The first thing is, you know, I think like every woman out there, like we struggle or we feel the burden of the unpaid labor, right? That's a phenomenon that has been more readily talked about, especially with COVID, where a lot of responsibility on the home front just simply falls to us. And in my personal relationship with my partner, my husband, he will do whatever I tell him to do. And sometimes it's just the mere fact that I have to highlight that something needs to get done that drives me absolutely batty. Like that mental load just is exhausting. So I've had some thoughts on that. One, you know, like all of us humans, most of our men that we are with, or even our partners, gender neutral, may be conditioned a certain way that we're not thinking about. Like they, especially if we're talking about men, may have even been as harmed by the patriarchy, where as we are. No, never mind. I take that completely back. But they may be as influenced by the patriarchy as we are, right? They have ingrained ideas that they might not even realize, and on a conscious level they're in disagreement with, but on a subconscious level, because it's a paradigm that they grew up seeing, because they haven't, there hasn't been that shift of power in the home in the same way, they don't see it as much. And so one thing that I'm working on personally is just like inviting him onto the team. Right? Like, yeah, I've got all of these ideas about things that we need to do. And sometimes I get pissed off because I have to bring them up. Like, yeah, I need you to pack lunches because kids can't go to school without lunches. And I'm on a meeting. Like, of course you have to pack lunches. And then I think about the fact that that's kind of unfair to him, kind of, you know, once I've reminded him about lunches a couple days in a row and I'm on a meeting, he's going to get lunches. Trying to invite him to the team and not have power over, instead to exhibit power with, like, hey, honey, thanks for doing the morning shift this morning while I'm in the meeting. Don't forget about lunches. Like, I'm not one-upping myself as much. And I'm instead saying, like, we're a team. And I recognize the part he's playing. And hey, a reminder, don't forget to pack lunches. Like, that is sort of the shift that I'm working on in that context. And I don't know if that resonates with anybody or if anybody has any thoughts on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. The one that I struggle with the most, I mean, my partner is actually, you know, he's the one that always mentions we are a team, right? He's the one who always tries to take things off of my plate.
Yeah.
And I'm resisting, believe it or not, for whatever reason, because I grew up like that, right? I have my own, you know, limitations of, like, I grew up in Italy where, you know, with my grandmother mostly, where, you know, that was a given. My grandfather would come home, sit at the table and expect that everything would just appear and disappear and be ready and all of that. she would prepare, clothes at night and all of that, right? So it's just like, it's so ingrained that I'm struggling with myself to keep it up. So that's a whole different story. And the other one that I'm struggling with more is with kids. But with kids, there might be the complication of their age and ability and, understanding of the world and things like that, right? That's a lot more complicated, especially with my son. I feel like with my daughter, I'm more of an equal in most cases. And with my son, I just feel like there is no option for power with. It's always power over, which I'm not sure how it's gonna, affect him long term. So
Can we dive a bit more into both of those? Is that okay?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you mention your husband or your partner saying like, we're a team, I was using the terminology, like invite him to the team, because in one of our throwdown battles, we don't get in these often, but when we do, we wind up in intensive therapy for months, right? But in one of our throwdowns in a kitchen one night, and this was months ago, he's like, Tara, you are calling the plays and I haven't even been invited to the team. How is that fair? And I was just like, oh, he's
Wow.
right. I haven't asked him to be on my team, and I'm calling the plays and expecting him to execute, very much a sports metaphor, right? But it resonated with me. I haven't asked you to be part of the team. And so going into the upbringing that you had and that the environment that you saw and the culture that you were in, I think that recognition that you have ingrained in you these behaviors that are somewhat expected, right? Although they're not, right? Your partner doesn't expect them. Your kids are their own beasts. So we'll get there separately. I won't talk about whether they expect them or not, but you grew up seeing that and thinking that was what was normal everywhere. And it's very probable that where you were, that was very normal. That was the culture, right? And so recognizing that is the first step. And I think I'd ask you to explore, and maybe we can even talk about this a bit now, when you think about the fact that that is not what your home life looks like, what emotions does that bring up for you? What feeling do you have?
Well, so I'm kind of torn a little bit because I remember growing up thinking that why my grandma had to, when we had large parties, for example, she would host all sort of, celebrations of a large family, right? So she was almost every weekend cooking and preparing, and she was always the last one to sit down at the table, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody was eating and she was being the waitress for everybody. And she would always be the last one. And I remember as a kid always asking my grandma, why are you not sitting with us, right? And I thought that was a big injustice, although I remember how pleased she was to be able to do that for her family, right? So, and now I feel like I don't know, part of me wants to emulate that ability to serve her family, right? And that's where my resistance comes from. And the other one is probably sometimes I joke with my partner and say, well, if I'm not washing the dishes and cleaning the house, then what am I bringing to this relationship, right? And I joke about that, which is not a great comment for me, right? Because it's very demeaning, but sometimes I do feel that way.
So what more? What more do you feel when you make that joke? What do you feel?
I don't know. I do feel like it's my responsibility and kind of my role to do those kind of things. And I do resist to him washing the dishes, right? I let him do it, but I'm not happy about it, right? I'm like, I should be doing that, right? I keep telling myself I should be doing that. I should be, but he's sort of I think he understands it in a way that it's she was raised like this, but that's not fair, right? So he's very progressive from that point of view, obviously grown in a completely different environment as well. And that's how he tries to kind of bring me to realize that now we can share those responsibilities. So it's very complex, actually.
It is.
Like,
Yeah, this stuff is not simple. It can seem really simple at face value, but it's not. So I'm curious why you feel like you should be the one doing the dishes.
I guess because that's what I've always seen, and that's one thing that, you know, kind of like my grandma would do, and she would be proud of it. Right? So it's part of like feeling fulfilled from like as simple as keeping the home clean and organized and having dinner ready and, you know, things like that. It's that sense of fulfillment, maybe. Yeah.
And so your grandma she would feel this sense of pride, this sense of ownership. And so can I ask, was your grandma employed outside of the home?
No, she was actually working at home. She was a seamstress.
Yeah.
So she worked from home.
So she was employed, she was a seamstress, and she worked from home. And the expectation was, especially at that time and in that location, that she was the person that managed the home alone. And now you are not in a position where you work from home, but you are not in a position where you are, or there is an expectation that you are the one that manages the home.
Yes, overall, not in my head.
Not in your head, right. Because that is a hard thing to unlock from. So a few things to journal about and think about before maybe we come together again is, you know, if I were to tell you that, you know, when we look at patriarchy and some of the negative aspects it has had on womanhood and motherhood, one of the things that comes up routinely is the fact that it has put on a pedestal this idea of women finding fulfillment through servitude. That, you know, the best way, and this is perhaps for some, I think a lot of women are on this sort of spectrum where at the one end, you find fulfillment and self-worth through giving to others. And we can say that there's not anything inherently wrong with that, right? We want to give to others. In the book Burnout, I think they talk about the human giver syndrome, right? Yeah. And they talk about human giver versus human being. Whereas a human giver, and this is, I'm going to do my best. So anybody else that's read the book or reading it, jump in. But human givers give to humanity. Whereas human beings get to be. They are the ones that receive, you know, the benefits of human givers. Now, if you think about what would really make society work best, if you could only choose one of those, would it actually be human beings or would it be human givers? Like if you could only have one, if everybody had to fall into one camp, would it be better to be in the human being camp or better to be in the human giver camp? What would be best for the world? What would be best for our societies? Turns out it would be great if we all actually fell in the human giver camp, right?
Yep.
And in order to do that, in order to allow our partners that want to be on a team, in order to show our children, both our male children and our female children and our non-gendered children, any children for the next generation, in order for us to change that paradigm, we have to be able to, I think, embody both being human givers and human beings. We have to respect that our partners want to be on our team, that our partners want to be human givers too. And that requires unlocking for some of us the self-worth that we feel through servitude. And for me, one of the key pieces in that was identifying and recognizing that that is like one of the known failings of patriarchy is that women then are expected to embody servitude and find fulfillment in it, and that's all they need. And we all know that's BS, right? Like, yes, we want to give to our families. Yes, we want to give to our communities. Yes, we want to give to others, but we also have to give to ourselves. Otherwise, we are not going to be able to keep giving to others, right? We have to be human beings be in order to also be human givers.
Makes sense. Yeah.
It does make sense. It does not mean it's easy to do, not at all. And it for me was essential to understand that sort of fallout from patriarchy and how much I've internalized that as an expectation, as well as I think there is definitely a reason I had 2 girls. Like the universe is just like, you have so much to learn and do better and overcome when it comes to gender. Like you're going to have to raise 2 hellfire girls. And so anyway, so that's just my feeling on it. And thinking about what our children see, regardless of their gender, and what they themselves are internalizing. You know, if your daughter and son are both seeing you be the last to sit down, find so much gratitude in, or excuse me, so much fulfillment in serving others, they are going to be internalizing that into their future as well. So thinking about showing them, you and your partner both doing that for each other, both doing that for the family, that can also help to change the paradigm shift over time, right?
Right. Thank you.
Thank
Tara,
you.
I'm in a different setup, so no man, no partner, my own choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a burnout, as you know, last year. So I went to 4 days. And basically, because on that 5th day of work, I had to do the housework. And you said to me, no, it's me time. And I tried to do that. And I was doing my sport. But then a week went in. I thought, well, I'll need to do that and this. So what I've had to end up doing now is, and I'm okay with it, I've gone back to a 5-day week, but I have had to hire help.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a gardener coming. I've got help with the housework, which has not happened before, and the laundry, and all the jobs that is unpaid labor, which is what you stressed at the beginning. I've hired it out. I've been paying someone to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, should I? I mean, I've got more money now because I'm in a better career. I've got a brilliant job, but I just feel we are slaves. Women are slaves, aren't we? With all these, you know, housework jobs and chores and everything, getting the meal on the table. My children are grown up. I've got 2 daughters as well, so I'm blessed as well. But it just gets me so angry when I see my mum. So a bit like you, Elisa, Dad comes home and is slumped in the chair, and the tea, you know, evening dinner's on the table. It's just how it's done. My mum, I once did a mathematical calculation. I worked out how many meals she cooked for him in the years, and it was 300,000. And I said, Dad, you've never cooked once, because it's just the way it is. And that's an English family, Elisa, not Italian. And I know Italians are more, you know, family focused, but I think women have got it really rough.
Yeah.
I mean, that calculation is heartbreaking, isn't it? It brings up, for me, it brings up this intense feeling of anger and resentment. And why did we inherit the world this way, right? How unfair is that to our mothers, to our grandmothers, to the generations of women before us? And then if I peel back anger, because anger is my default response, right? And anger is always a mask for another emotion. I feel this really deep well of sadness and imbalance.
Yeah, I feel sad when I see, you know, the shuffle. Oh, is food ready yet? Oh, you know, it's just expected. And to me, it's being a slave in the 20th century. You know, it's not right.
Yeah, no, those are all good points.
And we all have this ability to change the way we are moving in the world, right? As hard as it is. And even acknowledging with our partners, like, wow, I feel this ingrained need to do this. And I know that that's actually wrong. Like, yes, I want to be a human giver. We all want to, well, not we all should be human givers, right? But we also all have to be human beings, and finding that balance of having both characteristics and exhibiting them and showing them not only to ourselves, right? To our partners, allowing our partners on the team to do it when we have partners. When we don't, you know, figuring out, and outsourcing is a great thing. One thing that, oh, I don't have the quote, but most money management people talk about the fact that if you're going to spend money on one like luxury type item, it should be having some of these chores and things like that taken off your plate. And whatever it is for you, you know, for some people it's laundry, for some people it's gardening, for some people it's cleaning, meal prep, things like that. There can be a number of different things, and there's lots of industries and options out there. But what you can never get back is that time, right? You will never, that's what it was. It was that when people are asked in hindsight what they regret spending money on, no one ever says that they regret spending money on some of that work, that unpaid labor, you know, nobody ever regrets that. Like, yeah, you took that terrible vacation that you paid out the nose for. That was a regret possibly, right? Or yeah, you bought that huge new sound system that was obsolete within 3 months. That was a regret. No one ever regrets outsourcing unpaid labor. So know that when you're planning your finances. And that's not a situation that everybody is in, or nor can be in. But if you are in that situation, don't hesitate to talk with your partner about outsourcing some of it, as well as letting your partner on the team, because they can't read your plays if you don't even invite them to the game or to be on your team.
And I guess
Yeah,
once you've done your clubhouse talk about money,
yeah,
this is what you can afford then, because Tara, I've been with you 6 months, and you know, I am the guinea pig. I am earning the most money I've ever earned now through your ways, your teachings. And this is why I've hired help, because I can afford it now.
I love it. I love it. I will just give a quick plug that Gaynor has now is in a position. She was earning great money when we started working together, but you are now in a position where you're earning, I want to say, like 5 times what you invested on, like more in working with me. Like
thousands.
We've paid for it. So anyway, no, that is part of the joy of leading women through this journey and working together on this. So it's definitely a possibility. It's something that, you know, we can all talk about. And Elisa, going back to your question with kids of power with, because, oh, I have this dream of writing a parenting book, but I need to finish my job parenting, I feel, before I can write it. The idea of power over and power with kids. Again, I feel like I'm exactly like where I need to be for what I'm learning right now. When we appreciate that our children, and by appreciate, I mean really appreciate, not like, yeah, we know that on an intellectual level, but oh, they just can't get their shit together because they're 13 or they're 9 or they're 4, right? When we appreciate and recognize that our children are their own beings, like, and yes, it has to be kept in the caveat of like their age appropriateness, right? Like, it's not appropriate for me to ask my children to be making dinner. They're 4 and 5, right? Like, that will get a call from the Child Protection Services sooner than you could, you know, but if you appreciate the fact that they are their own beings, they have their own wants and desires. You know, when I can't get my 4-year-old out the door to get her to school because she has to change her socks 3 times, it is so frustrating for me. But when I work to remember, it's because each pair she puts on, she's uncomfortable in. She simply wants to be comfortable. Like, I have a level of compassion for her that I wouldn't have if I just thought she was being ridiculous, right? If I think that, sorry, my allergies are terrible. If I just think about the fact that she is like any other human being and she wants to be comfortable, and oh my gosh, this pair also irritates her ankle wound or whatever's going on. Like, okay, we need to keep going and I need to build in time to do that. And so I try and I'm curious about your situation with your son, and if you'd be willing to elaborate, because every age has its own nuances and every individual child has their own nuances. But let's talk about how maybe you could work to embody some more power with your son, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with my son is, well, he's 12 and a half, you know, in October, it will be 13. So part of it is probably, you know, the age, right? Being a preteen.
Right.
The thing with him is that it's always like I have to order him to do things. Otherwise, he won't do them, right? And there is always a lot of resistance. I guess there is no communication as to why. there is resistance, right? Is it because he doesn't agree? Is it because he has a different way, right? It's very often a power struggle, and it's because I'm exerting power over him. And that's the reality. Unfortunately, I do know that. But I don't feel like he is collaborative enough to actually try to do, I don't know, I can do power with my daughter, who's a little bit older. But she's more collaborative. We can talk at almost at the same level, and we get to a similar conclusion. So things just work out very easily, right? Not the same with my son. So, and I don't feel like I'm
back
on the same page with him most of the time.
Let's go back just a little bit, and my connection's unstable, so I'm going off video for a minute. Let's go back just a little bit, and let me ask you, how would you feel if someone was giving you commands and saying you had to do this, you have to do this? How do you feel?
I would hate it. I do. When people try it on me, I don't like it at all.
Do you think your son is any different?
No, he's not enjoying it either. But I feel like, I don't know, I've never found another way with him to get things done, like even going to sleep, right? I have to say go to sleep 50 million times. Or if, he is bothering his sister, even last night, there was like a major, argument because my daughter had to finish homework and he wanted to play. And it would just constantly, go and bother her. And, I ended up like raising my voice and just sending him to bed.
Yeah.
Right. Which is just the worst possible way to end the day.
Yeah. It feels pretty crappy, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I went to bed myself. I was just, I had lost all, interest in doing anything else at night. I just felt horrible and I just went to bed.
Was that like the last command you gave him, or what? Okay. So anything this morning?
This morning it was fine. He had breakfast, like obviously calmed down as well. So I tried to be a little bit more, loving and nurturing as a mother should be. And,
as a mother should be. We are human. We are human.
I know, but I'm the adult in the situation, right? I always try to remind myself. There is that level of what you were saying earlier, kids are observing, right? So whatever is my behavior, as much as I'm a human and I have my own emotions, whatever is my behavior, that's what, they are looking at as an example of, of somebody that they look very highly, right? So, so this morning was fine, and it was very smooth. There was no argument, no nothing. We got in the car, we got to school, everything was fine.
Okay, so let's go back to last night for just a little bit. And so he continued to pester his sister, and you had told him to stop. Why do you think he was pestering his sister?
He wants to play with her, right? It's that simple. He just wants to spend time with her. And she had to do homework. So to me, like in my priorities, her doing homework went so far high above you guys playing together that there was no, there was no middle ground on anything. It's just like, no, she needs to go finish her homework. So that's it, right? There is no discussion. It's obvious, right? It's obvious to me that should be, why are we arguing about this? She needs to go in her room and do homework and we have to be quiet. And that's obviously my expectation, and my priorities were way different from what his priority is. That is like, well, I'm going to sleep in half an hour. I want to play a little bit before I go to bed, right? Which is absolutely reasonable for a 12-year-old that hasn't seen his sister all day.
Right. So you've called out his need. He wanted to play. He had a half an hour. He knew he didn't have much time. Is there another way that you could have helped him fulfill that need while still respecting the fact that your daughter had to go do work?
I guess I could have played with him instead. I could have been like, how about you play with me? And then we'll let, Ashley go to do her homework. and then we play together, and then you go to bed. And then maybe tomorrow when she doesn't have homework, we play together.
How do you think he would have responded to that?
It would have just been thrilled. It would have been like, okay, yeah, let's play.
Would you, in hindsight, have had that half hour to give him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I ended up getting so upset and frustrated with myself that I just decided to go to bed.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything else. I didn't have anything else that needed to be done that evening. It just like changed my mood so quickly.
Right.
That's the other thing. Sometimes in those situations, my mood changes just so quickly that I can't even catch myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It just swings so far to like, that's it, I'm done kind of
Yeah.
idea. That it takes me a long time to recover from that.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
I can't just turn around and be like, okay, let's fix this right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I am so grateful for you for sharing this story. And I'm just thinking about the fact that, you know, when we recognize he's his own being, right? He has wants and needs and desires that he needs fulfilled too. And when we can look past the sort of childish presentation of it, right? It's presented as a need from a 12-year-old, right? So we can, as adults, immediately sort of discount it and just be like, you know, he just wants to play, but wait, isn't play sort of fundamental to all of us? Yeah. And is there a way I can meet his needs and help him as his parent, while also ensuring my daughter gets to do what she needs to do? There actually is. And just your drawing awareness on that will help to slow that down. Now, it's by no means, I am no perfect parent by any means, right? Like this is all a practice, but the awareness, the ability to talk about it, to think about it, and to look at it with a slightly different lens will in time, with practice, slow us down so that we might feel that initial like, oh my gosh, why can't he just leave her alone? We need to get this done. Okay, wait, what's his real need? He needs attention. He wants to play. He wants connection with his family. Well, wait, that's something I can help provide too. And how can I do that? And that is an example to me. And maybe I'm just like drawing a really far parallel. So, okay, that's an example to me of power with rather than power over.
Yeah. That's something definitely that I need to work on.
We all do in so many ways. Like I can observe it and talk about it, but yeah, it's a practice. It all is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you found it helpful. I'm curious what, you know, Gaynor or Laura or Becky, I know you joined late, so you don't have to chime in, but I'm curious if you have any immediate takeaways from this or any thoughts on this.
Well, I've got a 13-year-old granddaughter here, Lisa, and it's kind of the same thing, but her mom seems to be a lot calmer. So what my daughter does with her daughter, she does play a lot. So I think it's such a difficult thing to do. I never did it with my kids. I was manic and I didn't have time. But I just see the quality with my daughter and the granddaughter is to have this like harmony where they are playing. They do board games a lot, even late at night. And they're all piled out. You know, there's tons of them. Jigsaws is another thing. All the old-fashioned things, Tara, that young ones don't want to do now.
But they really do want to do it.
But they do. So,
Yes.
you know, that could be a tip to do that.
Yeah.
Another thing is I said about paying for staff. Well, today she actually cut the grass, my granddaughter. So she got a reward for that. So it's just like kind of doing things with them. Like you said, appreciate them for being their own beings, which we don't do it. We scream and shout. I'm sorry, but we do. We're busy, we're working, and we lose our temper. It's not just you, Lisa, or it's everyone, all women, I'm sure.
And men too, like we feel, and that's the thing, and where power over, especially in parenting, is the paradigm. Like it's the paradigm we saw growing up, unless we were in some incredibly enlightened family, right? It is the paradigm that we have inherited, where our needs as adults are more important than our children's needs. And there are some caveats to this, right? Of course, like we're responsible for putting a roof over the head and food on the table, and those are important, but our kids have real needs, and recognizing those and recognizing that we can help fulfill them and embody power with our children by seeing what they're craving, seeing where they're acting out and what attention-seeking behavior they're exhibiting, and trying to get to the heart of why, not just trying to shut down the behavior, but to get to the heart of why, can allow us to parent differently and embody a bit more of that power away.
Yeah, just something like you were saying about your son, you know, going to bed. Can something different be done in the bedroom? It's more cozy, or offer, I don't know, offer to change a wallpaper, or just things like that, where he wants to go in there. Because they say, don't they, you should only go in your bedroom to sleep. Now, no, that's not true. Kids are always in the bedroom.
True.
Just things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for him is really getting more attention. You know, he sometimes said, like, I feel lonely.
Yeah.
And he's never really alone,
Yeah.
right? But he's an extremely social kid. And I think it's true. When he says he's feeling lonely, it's probably true, right? Not the way maybe we interpret it, but the way he interprets it is like, doesn't have enough social interaction for his own well-being.
Yeah,
right?
he's sharing with you what his reality is, right? And whether or not we're like, oh, you're always with people, like, how can you be? It doesn't matter. It's his feeling, like you're saying. So you're already exhibiting that, right? You're saying that what he's saying is true, and it's his feeling. He's owning it. He's sharing it, and you now have this amazing gift to try and understand it and act on it in different ways, right? And through that, grow our own selves. Like, our kids show us so many areas for self-growth.
No kidding.
It's like self-growth on steroids, man. I just, yeah. And I saw once this, this meme, and I am trying to recall it, but I remember it's like kids have 2 buckets of needs every day. And one is, I can't remember what one of them is, which is why I'm going to have to look it up because it's going to drive me nuts. But one of the buckets is attention. Like, and they need to have those buckets filled. And it made so much sense. Again, it was a simple meme, but I'm going to find it and I'll share it with the group. But
I think the other one is connection.
Oh, that's very possible, if not probable. Yeah. So
Those
attention and connection.
Typical, the big 2, they need to feel. And that's why I'm saying for my son, even if he's around other people, I don't think that he feels the connection that sort of fills his bucket of connection.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the quality connection, right?
Yeah.
Not the like, you're here doing your homework and I'm making dinner, and so we're together. That's different. That is being in the same location.
Right. Exactly.
It's not the attention and the connection. That's such a good differentiator, because sometimes we have to put down our work. We have to order out, take out, or, do whatever, so that we can have that time with our family to also fulfill our kids' needs and to help them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
We are at the top of the hour. I don't have to run, but I should go soon. But any last parting thoughts? Anybody have any questions or thoughts, last minute statements? All right. If you're watching this later, hit #replay. If you are not joining Clubhouse later today, definitely catch up with me so that I can keep you abreast as I get onto more Clubhouse platform or more Clubhouse rooms. And I'm talking about things again later today at 3:15 Pacific time. We're talking about money, power, and patriarchy, and women empowered to ask for what they deserve and what that takes. Should be a good discussion.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Bye.